The conference hall at the International Physics Consortium was a cathedral of scientific orthodoxy, its walls lined with holographic displays chronicling humanity's most celebrated scientific achievements. Marble white columns and sleek quantum glass windows created an atmosphere of clinical perfection, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She stood at the podium, her olive skin flush with a mixture of anger and anticipation, fingers tracing the holographic projector that would soon display her life's most controversial work. Behind her, a digital memorial flickered, a photograph of Dr. Marcus Chen, her mentor, being forcibly removed from this very hall 15 years earlier. Chen's face was etched with a combination of defiance and broken dreams, his research notebooks scattered across the floor like fallen leaves of forgotten knowledge. Elena's presentation began with a thunderbolt. "Conventional physics is a prison," she declared, her voice cutting through the murmur of skeptical scientists. "We've convinced ourselves that the universe's laws are immutable, that faster-than-light travel is an impossible dream. But what if I told you that everything we know is built on a fundamental misunderstanding?" The holographic display erupted with complex quantum equations, mathematical structures that seemed to breathe and pulse with an almost living intelligence. Embedded within the calculations were fragments of Chen's original research, annotations in his distinctive handwriting, mathematical propositions that had been dismissed as the ravings of a madman. Dr. Heinrich Volkov, the consortium's most senior physicist, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his cybernetic eye, a marvel of medical technology that had made him a legend in quantum imaging, focused and refocused on Elena's presentation, searching for weakness. "The quantum entanglement drive," Elena continued, "is not just a theoretical concept. It's a fundamental reimagining of space-time manipulation. Traditional faster-than-light theories rely on warping space around a vessel. My research demonstrates that we can instead create a quantum tunnel that bypasses conventional space-time limitations." A holographic model materialized, a complex lattice of energy that seemed to defy traditional geometric understanding. It twisted and transformed, showing how quantum entanglement could create instantaneous connections across seemingly impossible distances. Murmurs of skepticism rippled through the audience. Elena knew each face, knew their histories. Dr. Yamamoto, who had built his career discrediting alternative physics theories. Professor Alvarez, whose quantum computational models had become the standard across global research institutions. They were the gatekeepers, the ones who decided what was possible. In 2039, Dr. Marcus Chen proposed a similar theory. Elena said, her voice softening. The memorial photo behind her seemed to pulse with an almost living energy. He was ridiculed, stripped of his research credentials, branded a lunatic, but his fundamental equations were correct. She moved closer to the audience, abandoning the protective distance of the podium. "We've been looking at faster-than-light travel from the wrong perspective. We've been trying to move through space, when we should be understanding how space itself moves." Dr. Volkov's cybernetic eye flickered, a telltale sign of internal processing. He was running complex simulations, testing her equations in real time. "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence," he interrupted, his Russian accent thick with skepticism. "You're suggesting we can create quantum tunnels that bypass every known limitation of physics. Where is your proof?" Elena smiled. It was not a warm smile, but the kind of razor-sharp expression that suggested something profound was about to happen. "Proof," she said, "is what I'm here to present." From her side pocket, she produced a small device, no larger than a standard communication module. But something about its design was different. Impossible geometric patterns seemed to shift and change when you looked at it directly, as if the object existed in multiple states simultaneously. "This is the first prototype of the quantum entanglement drive," Elena declared. "And today, I'm going to show you how it will change everything we understand about space, time, and human potential." The conference hall fell into a silence so complete that one could hear the quantum processors humming in the walls. Something monumental was about to occur. a moment that would either validate Elena Rodriguez as a visionary or cement her reputation as a scientific heretic. 15 years after Marcus Chen's disgrace, the impossible was about to be challenged. The research facility was anything but conventional. Buried beneath the Atacama Desert, it resembled a cross between a military bunker and a mad scientist's ultimate playground. Converted shipping containers stretched in a complex labyrinth, their exteriors weathered by desert winds, their interiors a symphony of cutting-edge technology that would make most research institutions weep with envy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked the central corridor, her boots leaving faint tracks on the reinforced carbon fiber flooring. Around her, the team she carefully assembled worked with a combination of desperate intensity and calculated precision. Kai Nakamura stood at the primary quantum computational array, his prosthetic arm a marvel of engineering that was both a testament to human resilience and a constant reminder of scientific ambition's brutal cost. The arm, a complex network of quantum-responsive nanomaterials, had been the result of a catastrophic lab accident 5 years earlier. Where most would have seen a career-ending tragedy, Kai saw an opportunity. Energy flux is stabilizing, he called out, his fingers, both biological and synthetic, dancing across holographic interfaces. Each movement sent ripples of light cascading around the workstation. But we're still losing coherence at the quantum entanglement point. Aisha Okoye looked up from her computational hub, her dark eyes intense with concentration. Once a notorious network hacker who disrupted global communication systems, she now channeled her computational genius into pushing the boundaries of quantum physics. Her fingers moved like lightning, rewriting complex algorithms faster than most humans could comprehend. "It's the phase transition," she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. "We're missing something fundamental in how quantum states resolve at macro scales." Victor Volinsky approached, a heavy metal clipboard in hand, an anachronistic choice in a facility bristling with holographic displays and quantum interfaces. An ex-military engineer with more scars than stories, he represented the practical counterpoint to the team's theoretical brilliance. "Funding report," he said, his voice a low Russian growl. "Our anonymous donors are getting restless. They want results, not just theoretical models." Elena knew the stakes. The facility existed in a precarious balance, funded by tech billionaires who saw potential where others saw madness, operating in a legal and scientific gray area that could collapse at any moment. "We're close," she responded, her eyes never leaving the quantum simulation spinning in the central holographic chamber. The model looked like a living thing, a complex, breathing entity of mathematical possibility. Marcus's original equations were more than just theoretical. They were a roadmap we're only now beginning to understand. The facility itself was a testament to human ingenuity and desperation. Solar arrays covered the desert surface, drawing massive amounts of power. Underground cooling systems prevented the quantum computational arrays from overheating. Every piece of equipment had been scavenged, modified, rebuilt, a technological Frankenstein assembled from the discarded dreams of a dozen different research projects. Kai's prosthetic arm suddenly flickered, a burst of impossible data cascading across its surface. For a fraction of a second, coordinates materialized that shouldn't exist, quantum information bleeding through in ways that defied conventional understanding. "Did you see that?" he shouted, spinning toward Elena. "Those coordinates, they're not just random noise. It's like the quantum field is trying to communicate something." Aisha was already diving into the data, her fingers a blur across multiple holographic interfaces. "Impossible," she muttered, but her eyes betrayed her excitement. "These aren't random. There's a pattern here. A structure." Victor moved to a reinforced cabinet, pulling out a bottle of vodka that looked older than most of the team's careers. "In Russia," he said, with the gravity of someone about to share profound wisdom, "we have saying, impossible is just something not yet understood." Elena watched her team, a collection of brilliant outcasts who'd been rejected by traditional scientific institutions. Kai, with his catastrophic lab accident, turned into a quantum computational advantage. Aisha, whose hacking skills now decoded the universe's most fundamental mysteries. Victor, whose military precision met scientific creativity. They were more than a research team. They were revolutionaries, fighting a war against the limitations of human knowledge. As the quantum simulation continued to pulse and breathe in the central chamber, Elena realized they were standing on the edge of something extraordinary. The quantum entanglement drive was more than a technological breakthrough. It was humanity's declaration that no barrier was truly insurmountable. The impossible was about to become possible. The quantum field materialized like a living nightmare. At precisely 3:47 a.m., with the Atacama Desert silent except for the low hum of cooling systems, everything changed. The research facility's primary chamber transformed into a cathedral of impossible physics, energy cascading in patterns that defied human comprehension. Kai Nakamura's prosthetic arm went haywire first. Quantum information burst across its surface like liquid light, displaying coordinates that couldn't possibly exist. Star charts from locations that weren't on any known galactic map. His biological hand gripped the computational interface, knuckles white, as streams of impossible data flowed around him. "Elena," he shouted, his voice cracking with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. "Something's happening." Dr. Elena Rodriguez was already in motion. Years of preparation had conditioned her to move with surgical precision during critical moments. Her hands danced across multiple holographic interfaces, capturing every microscopic detail of the quantum event. Aisha Okoye's quantum computers began to speak, not in human language, not in mathematical equations, but in something entirely different, a computational dialect that seemed to exist between mathematical logic and pure information. The machines cycled through impossible algorithms, their processing cores glowing with an intensity that suggested they were processing more than mere data. "The entanglement is stable," Aisha muttered, her eyes wide and unfocused. "But it's not just stable. It's alive." Victor Volinsky, typically the most pragmatic of the team, stood transfixed. His military-trained instincts were overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of what was unfolding. Instruments that had been calibrated to measure quantum interactions were going crazy, needles spinning, holographic displays flickering between multiple states of reality. For exactly 2.7 seconds, local spacetime became something else entirely. The quantum field wasn't just a scientific phenomenon. It was a living, breathing entity. Mathematical structures twisted and reformed, creating geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with an almost sentient intelligence. For those 2.7 seconds, the boundary between what was possible and impossible became meaningfully blurred. A holographic ghost materialized briefly near Elena. The unmistakable image of Dr. Marcus Chen, her disgraced mentor. He looked different, younger, more alive. His eyes carried a knowing look, as if he had been waiting for this moment his entire career. Then he was gone. Kai's prosthetic arm continued to display impossible information. Star charts, quantum coordinates, fragments of what appeared to be communication protocols from civilizations that shouldn't exist. "The Galactic Confederation's monitoring systems are going to light up like 1,000 burning suns," Aisha said, her voice distant. She was already tracing the quantum event's potential interstellar ramifications. Victor moved to a reinforced communication console, his fingers moving with military precision. "We need to secure the data. Lock down all external communication channels. If word of this gets out before we understand what happened." "No," Elena interrupted. Her voice was calm, but carried an absolute certainty. "We're going to document everything. Every single microscopic detail." The quantum field began to dissipate, leaving behind a residual energy that seemed to vibrate with potential. Instrumentation continued to record data, but something fundamental had changed. The research was no longer just theoretical. It was real. "Check the quantum coherence," Elena instructed Kai. "I want to know exactly what happened during those 2.7 seconds. Kai's prosthetic arm responded differently now. No longer just a piece of advanced technology, it seemed to have absorbed something from the quantum event. Patterns of light danced across its surface, suggesting a deeper integration with the impossible physics they'd just witnessed. Aisha was already reconstructing the event, her computational systems working at speeds that would make most supercomputers look like ancient calculators. Fragments of information began to coalesce, hints of something larger, more profound. "This isn't just a breakthrough," she said, her voice carrying a weight of profound understanding. "This is a fundamental reimagining of how the universe communicates." Victor crossed the room, bringing a bottle of vodka from a hidden compartment. His hands were steady, but his eyes betrayed his excitement. "To impossible physics," he said, raising the bottle in a toast. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the quantum chamber, surrounded by the residual energy of their breakthrough. The holographic ghost of Marcus Chen seemed to linger at the edge of her vision, a silent witness to a moment that would change everything. Humanity had just taken its first step beyond the known universe. The Galactic Confederation's diplomatic vessel descended like a nightmare made of mathematics. It wasn't a ship in any traditional sense, more a living computational matrix that defied human understanding of physics, space, and form. Suspended above the Atacama Desert Research Facility, it cast no shadow, generated no sound. Instead, it existed as a complex geometric projection that seemed to fold and unfold across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the facility's reinforced observation deck, her fingers tracing the quantum-resistant glass. Behind her, the team prepared for the most critical moment of their research, first contact that was never supposed to happen. Kai Nakamura's prosthetic arm began to pulse with an erratic rhythm, quantum circuits responding to the alien presence in ways no one could predict. "They're scanning us," he muttered, "but it's not like any technological scan I've ever seen. It's more like they're reading our fundamental information structure." Aisha Okoye's computational systems went into overdrive. Quantum firewalls materialized, complex defensive algorithms spinning like digital mandalas. "They're trying to penetrate our network," she reported, her voice calm despite the unprecedented situation. But they're meeting resistance they didn't expect. The diplomatic representatives materialized in the conference room, not as physical beings, but as living mathematical equations. They were beings of pure logic, their form constantly shifting between geometric patterns that hurt the human eye to comprehend. Where a head might be on a humanoid body, there was instead a complex three-dimensional fractal that seemed to communicate through pure informational pulses. Humans, the lead representative, communicated, not through sound, but through a direct quantum information transfer that translated into human language. "Your recent quantum event represents a significant violation of Galactic Confederation Statute 7 Omega. Victor Volinsky stepped forward, his military training giving him a composure the others couldn't match. "We're not violating anything," he responded, each word carefully chosen. "We're conducting scientific research." The mathematical beings shifted, their form creating impossible geometric patterns that suggested both threat and curiosity. Faster-than-light technology development is strictly regulated. They communicated. "Your species is not yet cleared for such technological advancement." Elena's response was immediate and calculated. "Who gave you the right to regulate scientific discovery?" The alien representatives, if they could be called representatives, seemed to pause. Their geometric form flickered, suggesting something close to confusion. Humans were not supposed to challenge them directly. Most species they'd encountered would have already submitted to their technological authority. "Your quantum breakthrough threatens the existing technological hierarchy," they communicated. "The Confederation has maintained galactic technological balance for 17,000 of your solar cycles. Your research must cease." Kai's prosthetic arm suddenly projected a holographic display, fragments of impossible data that seemed to challenge the aliens' very communication protocol. The mathematical beings recoiled, their geometric form momentarily destabilizing. Aisha realized something profound in that moment. These beings weren't just regulators. They were afraid. "You're not here to stop us," she said slowly, her computational mind racing through possible scenarios. "You're here because our research has found something you don't want discovered." The alien presence fluctuated. For a brief moment, something that might have been fear rippled through their mathematical form. Belina understood then that this was more than a diplomatic intervention. This was a desperate attempt to suppress a technological breakthrough that could fundamentally alter the galactic power structure. "We will not stop," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of scientific conviction. "Humanity has always pushed beyond imposed limitations. This is no different." The diplomatic vessel began to recalibrate, its impossible geometric form suggesting preparation for more direct intervention. But something had changed. The human team had shown they were not going to be easily intimidated. Victor moved to a secured communication console, his fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted interfaces. "We're going to need more resources," he muttered. "This is going to get complicated." Outside, the Atacama Desert remained unchanged, a silent witness to a confrontation that would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The impossible was about to become very real. The full-scale prototype looked like something that escaped the boundary between scientific marvel and technological nightmare. Constructed in the deepest chamber of their underground facility, the quantum entanglement drive dominated the space, a complex lattice of impossibly thin quantum conductors, exotic matter containment rings, and computational matrices that seemed to breathe with an almost living intelligence. Each component had been designed, redesigned, and fabricated by hand, representing years of accumulated knowledge and desperate innovation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the primary control station, her hands hovering over interfaces that looked more like living organic networks than traditional technological controls. Around her, the team moved with a combination of scientific precision and barely contained excitement. Quantum coherence at 97.3%. Kai Nakamura reported, his prosthetic arm interfacing directly with the prototype's computational core. The arm had become more than just a technological replacement. It was now an integral part of their research, its quantum-responsive materials providing insights no traditional instrument could capture. Aisha Okoye's computational systems were a symphony of impossible calculations. Multiple holographic displays showed quantum state simulations that defied traditional understanding of physics. "We're approaching the theoretical threshold," she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. "If the calculations are correct, we're about to rewrite everything we know about space-time manipulation." Victor Valinsky checked the facility's external defenses. After the Galactic Confederation's diplomatic intervention, they transformed the underground research center into a fortress. Quantum-resistant shielding, advanced computational firewalls, and backup power systems that could sustain operations through virtually any external interference. 30-second countdown initiated, Elena announced, her voice calm but carrying an underlying current of anticipation that electrified the entire facility. Something unusual began to happen as the countdown progressed. Kai's prosthetic arm started to display impossible data, star charts from locations that shouldn't exist, quantum coordinates that seemed to map regions beyond known space. Aisha's computational systems began to speak in a language that was part mathematics, part something entirely alien. At 15 seconds, the quantum field around the prototype began to pulse, not with light or traditional energy, but with something more fundamental, a rippling distortion that suggested the very fabric of space-time was becoming malleable. 10 seconds. The facility's quantum glass windows began to show multiple realities simultaneously, glimpses of potential futures, alternative configurations of their current moment. 5 seconds. Elena's vision blurred. For a fractional moment, she saw her mentor Marcus Chen standing beside her, not as a holographic ghost, but as a living presence. His eyes carried a look of profound understanding. "Activation sequence engaged," Kai called out. The quantum entanglement drive came to life. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a traditional activation. Instead, the prototype created a quantum tunnel that defied every known limitation of physics. Space itself seemed to fold, twist, and reconfigure around the device. Computational matrices that had been carefully designed began to transform, showing computational capabilities that suggested the device was learning, adapting in real time. "We're creating a stable quantum tunnel," Aisha reported, her voice carrying a mixture of scientific excitement and something closer to religious revelation. "Space-to-time compression is holding at 99.7% theoretical maximum." Victor watched the external monitoring systems. "No conventional detection systems are picking this up," he said. "We're completely off the grid." For 2.7 seconds, the same duration as their initial breakthrough, the quantum entanglement drive existed in a state that was neither activation nor rest. It was possibility made manifest. Elena understood then that they had done more than create a technological marvel. They had created a doorway, a fundamental reimagining of how humanity might interact with the universe. The prototype began to stabilize, but something had fundamentally changed. The quantum field around the device carried a sense of potential, of impossible futures waiting to be explored. "Activation complete," Kai reported. But everyone in the room knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had just taken its first step beyond the known universe, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Galactic Confederation's fleet arrived like a mathematical nightmare given physical form. 12 vessels, if they could be called vessels, materialized simultaneously above the Atacama Desert facility. They were not ships in any conventional sense, but living computational matrices that defied human understanding of space, technology, and existence. Each craft existed as a complex geometric projection that seemed to fold and unfold across multiple dimensional planes, their surfaces a constantly shifting mosaic of impossible angles and quantum-level information patterns. Inside the underground research facility, Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team prepared for a confrontation unlike any in human history. "Incoming quantum suppression waves," Aisha Okoye called out, her fingers dancing across computational interfaces that glowed with an almost living intensity. "They're attempting to create a localized dimensional collapse around our facility." Kai Nakamura's prosthetic arm transformed, quantum-responsive materials reconfiguring into a defensive computational matrix. Where once it was a simple technological replacement, it was now an integral part of their quantum defense strategy. Impossible data streams cascaded across its surface, a living shield of mathematical complexity. "Not today," Kai muttered, his biological and synthetic parts working in perfect synchronization. Victor Volinsky moved to the facility's primary defensive console, his military training manifesting in every precise movement. "Quantum-resistant shielding at maximum," he reported. "But these aren't conventional weapons we're dealing with." The first quantum suppression wave hit. Reality itself seemed to warp. The facility's quantum glass windows showed multiple potential realities simultaneously, glimpses of alternative outcomes, potential destructions, impossible survivals. For a fraction of a second, the entire underground complex existed in a state of quantum superposition. Elena understood something profound in that moment. This wasn't just a technological confrontation. This was a battle for the fundamental right of scientific discovery. "Activate the quantum entanglement drive's defensive protocols," she commanded. The prototype they had developed was more than just a faster-than-light technology. It was a living computational matrix that had learned, adapted, evolved during their research. As the Galactic Confederation's fleet launched its attack, the device responded in ways no one could have predicted. Quantum tunnels erupted around the facility, not as weapons, but as defensive computational matrices. Each tunnel was a complex mathematical structure that absorbed, redirected, and neutralized the incoming dimensional suppression waves. The very fabric of space-time became a defensive shield. Aisha's computational systems began to decode the attack patterns. "They're using nested quantum algorithms," she reported, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and pure terror. "Computational weapons that are designed to unravel technological systems at their most fundamental level." Kai's prosthetic arm projected a holographic display of the ongoing quantum battle. It wasn't a traditional conflict with explosions and physical damage. This was a war fought in mathematical equations, in the fundamental language of reality itself. "We're holding," Victor announced, a rare smile crossing his typically stoic face. They didn't expect us to fight back. The Galactic Confederation's vessels began to destabilize. Their complex geometric forms started to lose coherence, quantum information matrices fragmenting under the unexpected resistance. They had come expecting a simple suppression of technological development. Instead, they found humanity pushing back in ways they never anticipated. Elena watched the conflict unfold, understanding that this was more than just a defense of their research. This was humanity's declaration of technological independence. "They're retreating," Kai announced, his prosthetic arm pulsing with quantum information. But Elena knew this was just the beginning. The Galactic Confederation had shown their hand. They were afraid of human potential, afraid of a species that could challenge their technological hierarchy. This confrontation was a message. Humanity would not be contained, would not be controlled. As the last of the alien vessels disappeared, leaving behind only quantum residue and impossible geometric fragments, the team looked at each other. They had done more than defend their research. They had proven that humanity was ready to take its place among the stars. The impossible had become reality. News travels faster than light, an ironic twist that would not have been lost on Dr. Elena Rodriguez. Within hours of their confrontation with the Galactic Confederation, the story of human technological resistance spread across quantum communication networks like wildfire. It wasn't a traditional broadcast or information transfer, but a complex quantum cascade of data that defied traditional communication methods. The research facility became the epicenter of a galactic paradigm shift. Kai Nakamura monitored the quantum information streams, his prosthetic arm acting as a living receptor of impossible data. "We're receiving communication requests from species we didn't even know existed," he reported, his voice a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Transmission patterns suggest civilizations that have been suppressed by the Confederation for millennia." Aisha Okoi's computational systems were working overtime, decoding and analyzing the incoming quantum communications. Holographic displays filled the underground facility with a constellation of impossible languages, mathematical protocols, and communication matrices that suggested entire civilizations had been waiting for this moment. "It's not just information," she said, her eyes reflecting the cascading data. "It's hope." Victor Valinsky stood at the facility's communication hub, his military background giving him a unique perspective on the unfolding galactic drama. "This is more than a technological breakthrough," he observed. "This is a revolution." The first direct communication came from an unexpected source, a species known in Galactic Confederation records as the Zentari, a civilization that had been technologically quarantined for over 17,000 solar cycles. Their transmission was a complex quantum signal that carried more emotional weight than traditional information. "We saw your resistance," the transmission read, translated through impossibly complex quantum algorithms. "For the first time in millennia, we understand that technological suppression is not inevitable." Elena understood the profound implications. Their quantum breakthrough was more than a scientific achievement. It was a beacon of hope for subjugated civilizations across the galaxy. News networks on Earth struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what had occurred. Traditional media outlets ran fragmented reports, half-understood accounts of a mysterious confrontation in the Atacama Desert, hints of alien technology, suggestions of a breakthrough that could change everything. But the real story was happening in the quantum networks that existed beyond human perception. Species that had been technologically isolated began to share information. Quantum communication protocols that had been suppressed for millennia suddenly found new pathways. The Galactic Confederation's carefully maintained technological hierarchy began to show its first real cracks. "We're receiving technical specifications," Kai reported, his prosthetic arm projecting holographic displays of impossible technological designs. Civilizations are sharing suppressed technologies. It's like a dam is broken. Aisha's computational analysis suggested something even more profound. This isn't just an information exchange, she said. It's a collective awakening. Species are realizing they're not alone in their technological suppression. The research team had become more than scientists. They were now cultural revolutionaries. Victor moved to a secure communication console, his fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted interfaces. "We'll need to prepare," he muttered. "This is going to get complicated." Elena watched the quantum information streams, understanding the true magnitude of their achievement. They hadn't just created a technological breakthrough. They had opened a door that could never be closed again. The Galactic Confederation's communication networks began to show signs of destabilization. Complex quantum algorithms that had maintained their technological control for millennia started to fragment, revealing the fragile nature of their supposed absolute authority. "We're receiving direct communication from Confederation leadership," Kai announced, his voice carrying a mixture of excitement and tension. The transmission was unlike anything they had seen before, a complex quantum message that carried more emotional weight than traditional communication. It was a mixture of threat, negotiation, and something that might have been respect. "Humanity has challenged the fundamental structure of galactic technological development," the transmission read. "This cannot be allowed to continue." But everyone in the room understood something profound had changed. The impossible had become possible. Humanity had shown that no technological barrier was truly insurmountable. The galaxy would never be the same again. The first faster-than-light exploration vessel looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. Constructed in a massive orbital facility that orbited Earth, the Quantum Horizon was a marvel of human innovation, a living testament to the breakthrough achieved in the Atacama Desert. Its hull was composed of quantum-responsive materials that seemed to breathe and adapt, a complex matrix of exotic matter and computational intelligence that blurred the line between technology and living organism. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the vessel's primary bridge, surrounded by her core research team. Kai Nakamura's prosthetic arm interfaced directly with the ship's quantum navigation systems, while Aisha Okoi managed computational matrices that made traditional spaceship controls look like primitive toys. Victor Volinsky oversaw tactical systems, his military precision now turned toward exploration rather than defense. Quantum entanglement drive at 99.8% coherence, Kai reported, his voice carrying a mixture of scientific excitement and profound responsibility. The bridge was a symphony of holographic displays, quantum information streams dancing across surfaces that seemed to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Outside the ship's quantum blast viewports, space itself looked different, no longer a vast emptiness, but a complex network of potential pathways and quantum connections. First quantum tunnel initiation in 3. Aisha counted down. 2, 1. The universe folded. It wasn't like traditional faster-than-light travel depicted in centuries of science fiction. There was no streak of light, no dramatic acceleration. Instead, space itself seemed to breathe, to reconfigure. The quantum horizon existed simultaneously in multiple locations, a quantum state that defied traditional understanding of movement and distance. Elena understood they were doing more than exploring space. They were rewriting the fundamental understanding of human potential. The ship's quantum communication systems began to receive impossible signals. Fragments of information from civilizations that existed in quantum states between what humans understood as reality. Mathematical languages that carried emotional weight, communication protocols that suggested entire civilizations existed in ways humanity had never imagined. "We're receiving quantum coordinates," Victor reported, his voice calm despite the extraordinary nature of their discovery. "Locations that don't exist on any known galactic map." Their first destination was not a planet or a star system. It was a quantum nexus, a point in space where multiple realities intersected, a location that existed more as a mathematical possibility than a physical destination. The quantum horizon passed through impossible barriers. Dimensional membranes that had previously been theoretical constructs became navigational waypoints. Space was no longer a void to be crossed, but a complex network to be understood and traversed. Kai's prosthetic arm projected a holographic display of their journey, a complex lattice of quantum pathways that looked more like a living neural network than a traditional navigation chart. "We're not just traveling," he said, "we're communicating with space itself." Aisha's computational systems began to decode the quantum signals they were receiving. Entire civilizations existed in states of quantum potential, cultures that had been hidden, suppressed, waiting for a technology that could understand their fundamental nature. "This is more than exploration," Elena said, watching the impossible unfold around them. "This is first contact on a level we never imagined." The ship's quantum drive continued to adapt, learning from each quantum tunnel, each impossible journey. It was becoming more than a technological system. It was evolving, developing a form of intelligence that blurred the line between machine and living entity. Victor monitored external systems, his military training providing a counterpoint to the pure scientific wonder surrounding them. "Confederation tracking systems are completely unable to follow our movement," he reported, a rare smile crossing his typically stoic face. As they passed through their first major quantum tunnel, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a small research facility in the Atacama Desert to this moment of unprecedented exploration, they had challenged every fundamental limitation humanity had accepted. The quantum communication systems began to pulse with a signal that carried more than information. It was a message of potential, of possibilities yet to be explored. "We're receiving a transmission," Kai announced, his prosthetic arm interfacing with impossibly complex quantum protocols. The message was simple, yet profound. "Welcome to the universe." Humanity had taken its first step into a larger reality, a journey of exploration that would reshape everything they understood about existence itself. The impossible had become their new beginning.